Now, there was a report that came out that DeAndre Hopkins and the Cardinals might just end up cutting him because right now what's holding back a trade is draft compensation. The Cardinals want a package similar to what the Panthers got for Christian McCaffrey. And just to summarize that, McCaffrey went for a second, third, fourth, and fifth round pick. And there's no team that's willing to give that type of capital for DeAndre Hopkins, mostly because we see Brandon Cooks get traded for a fifth round pick. We see Jalen Ramsey go for a third round pick and then the backup tight end. So I doubt that the Cardinals get the ideal return for Hopkins, but I think that it would be dumb to just like outright cut him. Like I think a fourth round pick is better than no pick if you have to trade him. So I don't know what the holdback is here, but DeAndre Hopkins is still one of the top receivers in the game, 10th in yards per game, and when Kyler Murray was healthy, he was third in yards per game. And I would love to see him to go to one of these contenders like the Chiefs or the Bills and give Stephon Diggs a receiver opposite of him that is elite. The Ravens if Lamar stays, but that's looking unlikely. And then in the NFC, man, what if the Cowboys make another splash move? And then they just say they got Cooks.
You need that.
They got Cooks. They got Diggs. And then they got Hopkins. You're not stopping that, Dehls. You're not stopping that.
To push the Cowboys.
Why didn't you say CD Lamb?
You're just saying the moves they made this offseason.
Yeah.
Cooks, Diggs.
You said Diggs.
Oh, Gilmore.
No, I said Gilmore.
No, you said Diggs. But
you said
Gilmore. But listen, Cooks, Hopkins, CD Lamb. You're not stopping that, Riv.
I agree.
You're not stopping that, Dehls.
That's a tough, nasty.
You're not stopping it.
Riv's the Eagles fan.
He said Riv.
You're not stopping that.
No, he said my name. He said my name first.
Okay.
He said Riv. I just think D-Hop's kind of old. This isn't like I think if this was D-Hop and he was 27 years old, I think the market would look a lot different. Especially like giving a guy of that age a big contract is kind of tough. And D-Hop's dealt with injuries. Like he's dealt with legal problems, he's dealt with injuries. So this isn't a healthy D-Hop. This is a guy who, if he does play, we know he's giving you 80 to 100 yards, 8 receptions, probably a touchdown. But there's a chance he does not play the next week. Injury concerns, legal problems, his age. So these are big concerns. So I can understand like DJ Moore, CMC were different packages. They were much younger players. CMC does have injury concerns, but he's a much younger player. So I think the age thing is really big. I wouldn't say cut him though. I think Arizona can still get something for D-Hop if they lower the price. I think if they lower the price a little bit, you can still gain something from D-Hop. And there's no point in cutting him because you have to build up some sort of assets. You have to keep building, keep climbing. You pretty much have Kyler Murray, who's probably not going to play for most of next year. You have a pretty naked defense. You lost Byron Murphy, J.J. Watt retired and stuff like that. You just have Budda Baker and others. Offensively, you re-signed Robbie Anderson, but that's okay. Rondale Moore is 5'9". You don't want him to be your number one. A.J. Green retired. So you don't have a receiving core. Your offensive line stinks. Your running backs aren't that good. So you're pretty much just Kyler Murray and others. So it's like you're pretty much stuck in a position where you need as many draft picks as you can get, and you have to bulk up the defense through the draft. You have to go get money. You paid Kyler Murray, so his contract is going to kick in soon. So that's going to be a big issue. The Cardinals are pretty much just stuck in kind of like limbo right now. And it's not nothing where they can't get themselves out of, but you have a new coach also too. So now you have to figure that out and see how good he is. They're just really in a place where there's no real direction, and they kind of have a lot of things holding them back.
The Cardinals are in a really tough spot. Obviously you get a new head coach, Jonathan Gannon comes in. But as Riv mentioned, Kyler's going to be out basically the whole year. So if this was a team that didn't have a quarterback on the roster, or maybe had a quarterback we were questionable about who didn't have a big contract, I feel like the future is a bit more clear. For the Cardinals, though, this upcoming season, they have the 3rd overall pick. I could really be in favor of trading back in extra picks, but also if you want Will Anderson or Jalen Carter and you just think one of those guys could be a Hall of Fame level player, go for it and don't get cute. But the future is what scares me the most because this Cardinals team is going to be terrible. The NFC's ass. It's the worst conference. This is the worst we've seen the NFC in a long time. And they might be the worst team in the NFC. So what makes that tricky is this time next year, it's very possible the Cardinals holding a top 5 pick, top 3. They could legitimately be the worst team in the NFL next season. We don't even know who their starting quarterback is going to be. So they could be in a situation where they have a top 2 or 3 pick. They could get one of these top prospects, but you already have Kyler Murray under contract, and trading him would have such a huge dead cap hit that it probably doesn't make a lot of sense financially to trade him. And then maybe next year you could trade down and get a boatload of picks. But for at least this next season, it's hard for me to sit here and really look at the state of the Cardinals and have a positive outlook. We're not going to know if Jonathan Gannon's a good coach year one. I don't think anyone's expecting the Cardinals to have a great defense given their personnel. So if he ends up having a bottom 5 defense, are we going to look at the players or are we going to look at the coach? More likely, we're going to look at the players. Then offensively, without a quarterback, they're not going to score a lot of points. So again, it's hard to look at the offensive coordinator that he's bringing over and say, can he actually call plays, or is he just, a product of his team where he doesn't have really any skill position players and coaches? So the Cardinals right now is just in a really tough situation that it's hard to evaluate your new head coach and staff. And it's also your future is kind of murky because you like Kyler Murray. Are they in love with him like Joe Burrow? Probably not, to the sense that he's their locked and loaded quarterback for the next 10 years, but they kind of paid him like that already, so it's tough to move off him. Talk about D-Hop real quick. I have 4 spots in mind. 2 feel a little bit more realistic, or 1 feels more realistic. That's the Chiefs. I think they need an outside presence desperately. You have Travis Kelce there. Juju left in free agency. Tony, Sky Moore, okay.
There's Tony's ready for a breakout.
But D-Hop would set that team to another level. The other one's the Giants. They got Waller. It feels like that's the only move they're really going to make in terms of splash moves. But I do think they need another weapon desperately. I don't think Darren Waller, Saquon, and the surrounding pieces with Sterling Shepard is really enough to get the most out of Daniel Jones. You're going to be able to get, I think, a similar season to last season, but I don't think Daniel Jones is going to be able to level up with just Darren Waller, who's dealt with injury the last 2 seasons. I think these last 2 teams are kind of outliers, or maybe teams that aren't being talked about. One is the Carolina Panthers. First of all, I don't know if D-Hop is going to be interested in going there. If he's a free agent, they're not going to compete. But I love the idea of getting your quarterback, whether it's Stroud, Young, whoever, get him legitimate number 1 wide receiver. They traded DJ Moore. Bringing in D-Hop gives someone that he can rely on every single week, every single game, every single throw to be able to make that 50-50 contested catch, to be able to beat man coverage, to be able to find the soft spot in the zone. To trade for him is going to be hard. They don't have a lot of draft picks. And if he gets cut, he probably won't choose the Panthers. But I like that spot. Then the last one's the Jaguars. I know they just got Calvin Ridley. They gave up a 2nd-round pick, I want to say. But you have to take advantage of Trevor Lawrence being on a rookie contract. Calvin Ridley and Christian Kirk, it's fine. It's a really good duo. You add DeAndre Hopkins, you're talking about one of the best wide receiver trios in the entire NFL. You have Trevor Lawrence, who's already shown he could be a top 7 quarterback. So with DeAndre Hopkins, he could take an MVP type level leap next season if they're able to get that done. I just don't know if they're going to be aggressive enough to go out and trade for him, because then once you get into free agency, D-Hop might like Jacksonville's situation, Florida, no state income tax. But then if you have the options like the Chiefs and the Bills, I have a feeling that he's going to lean those 2 teams over Jacksonville.
D-Hop in Jacksonville would be absolutely disgusting, but I think the reason why no one's acquired him is because he's got $22 million. You got $30 million cap hit and a $22 million dead cap. So for the Cardinals to cut him would be a massive L, because a top 10, top 15 receiver at his worst. But I also feel like D-Hop, we've yet to see him in the playoffs with a real quarterback. In 2021, he was hurt after undergoing knee surgery. I would love to see him with Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, but for Arizona, they need to get something in return for a receiver that is going to take Kyler Murray to a whole different level. And so I'm really hoping, selfishly as a football fan, they cut him so they can go to a real team like the Chiefs that don't have the cap spending to then trade for him. But at the same time, for Arizona, cutting him would be such an L here. Cutting a top 15 receiver who's got a $22 million dead cap, there's just no win there whatsoever.
I think that the Cardinals would save $19.5 million if they cut D-Hop post June 1st.
You could do the designation.
Yeah,
I was looking at Spot Rack. So
Yeah,
$22 million dead cap.
So I think they'd save money if they cut him post June 1st. But listen, the bottom line, when we talk about the Arizona Cardinals are the worst team in the NFL. They are in the worst position for the future in the NFL. They're paying a quarterback that we're not even sure is a legitimate franchise quarterback $200+ million. Kyler Murray, yes, he has the talent and the skill, but the intangibles, the leadership, we're not sure it's all there. The offensive line stinks. If they cut or trade D-Hop, they have no number one wide receiver. Hollywood Brown is their best receiver. They have no running back. Their defensive line sticks. They missed on 2 linebackers in the first round, and Xavier Collins and Isaiah Simmons. They just let go of Byron Murphy. He's in Minnesota. That was their best corner. The Cardinals lack talent. They lack future assets. And the best thing for them going forward is possibly stinking and trading a top 3 pick that is going to be a quarterback to one of these quarterback needy teams and getting a boatload of draft picks. But the bottom line is that the Cardinals are directionless. And the worst part about it is that their coach, Jonathan Gannon, I think is going to be a disaster. He's going to be one of the worst coaches in football. And the Cardinals, with paying Kyler a big time contract, with having one of the worst coaches in the NFL, this is going to be a dumpster fire.
And I think the worst part is you have to almost wait on a rebuild because, listen, they may trade the picks this year, right? It's possible they trade the number 3 overall pick and get those, future assets. But the biggest asset you're going to get is likely going to be in the 2024 draft. When you have all of those quarterbacks, you'll likely have a top 5 pick again. And depending on whichever way they go, whether that's Kyler Murray or the quarterback, it feels like next year really might be the year they reset and really start that rebuild. Gannon, like I talked about earlier, I'm not the highest on him. I don't love defensive-minded head coaches if you could get an offensive-minded guy. But I don't think it's kind of unfair to say he's going to be a disaster because this might be the worst roster in the NFL without Kyler Murray. So while I agree he's not a slam dunk hire, at least from the outside point of view, like we loved Brian Dable last year. We thought that was a home run hire. This doesn't feel like that. But I also don't think it's fair to say he'll be a disaster because the team sucks. Like
it's the worst situation.
Great coach, there's only so much you can do.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that it's going to be a disaster because they talked to Lou Anarumo and they could have hired him instead of Jonathan Gannon. And they chose Jonathan Gannon over Lou Anarumo, who is a better defensive coach and who is a better defensive game planner. That's for one. When we talk about Jonathan Gannon, I mean, Dehls, he could have fooled you thinking that defense was going to maybe stop the Chiefs in Super Bowl. He ain't fool me, baby, because the Eagles against
I said they were going to stop
the Eagles against top offenses and against top quarterbacks were ridiculously awful. They were horrendous. They were awful. You picked the Eagles to win Super Bowl, baby, and you lost. You lost because you trusted Jonathan Gannon. And I'm here to tell you, you can't trust that man, Jonathan Gannon. You can't trust him.
Yeah, but I still think even no matter what coach in that situation is still going to be a disaster regardless. That's just a horrible situation.
It's so hard.
Lou Anarumo wouldn't have been a disaster.
How many wins do they have with Gannon? How many wins do they have with Lou?
Lou Anarumo is legitimately the best defensive game planner in football.
How many wins do they have with Lou?
But look at the roster.
How many wins will they have with Gannon?
Their defense will definitely be better. Jonathan Gannon fooled all the odds thinking the Eagles' defense was actually elite.
Joel, he's not going to change
the win-loss
record.
Who do the Cardinals have on defense?
He fooled you.
Not many
Cardinals have.
Isaiah Simmons.
Not many players, but I count on Lou Anarumo to unlock those players more than Gannon.
That's all he did in Cincinnati. Anarumo. He was probably the best defensive coordinator in football altogether.
Before Lou Anarumo, did you know about Jermaine Pratt? Did you know about Logan Wilson? Did you know about Awuzie became a top corner in Cincinnati? I mean, Eli Apple became a starting level corner, a real good corner in Cincinnati. What are we talking about here? Lou Anarumo
defense actually.
I think Lou's the better defensive coordinator for sure. But for this Cardinals team, it feels like it's really hard for any coach to come in and we feel great about it because the roster is just torn apart.
Okay, the roster, yes, but in terms of coaching and direction, we knew Jonathan Gannon was a bad hire. Jonathan Gannon was a horrible hire. He's somebody that's been he's been a defense coordinator for 2 years, and the Eagles defense has not been good against good competition in those 2 years. You can argue the biggest problem with Philadelphia was Jonathan Gannon, and that's why when he left the Eagles fans were throwing a parade because they knew they just upgraded by subtracting his ass.
Damn.
I don't disagree, but I just don't know if Lou. I don't know if he changes the outcome or the future of the Cardinals. Like you, I feel he'll be a better defensive coordinator. Maybe he could develop the guys better. But if you have this team with really no quarterback and defense that doesn't have much talent, I don't know if Lou is making this.
Well, Kyler Murray, if Kyler Murray's back and he's healthy, I definitely feel more confident in Lou Anarumo than Jonathan Gannon.
But there's a chance, like Kyler's going to be out at least the first month this season, probably longer. And now
That's
you're
4 or
relying
6
on him.
games.
You're relying on him coming back middle of the season. The year after an ACL tear for quarterbacks usually don't have the same production. It's really year 2 that they get back to their prior injury type of production. So even with Kyler back this season, I don't think we're going to see the same Kyler Murray we saw pre-injury. I think we'll see that in 2024.
All I'm saying is that although you want to give Gannon the benefit of the doubt, it was a bad hire to begin with.
I didn't love it. But also, I don't know if Lou is drastically changing the direction of this franchise, with all due respect.
I feel much more confident in Lou Anarumo. If he was the coach for this team, I'd say, you know what? They're going to be a competitive 4 or 5 win team.
And with Gannon, what are they?
Going to be a 2-win team?
They're probably a 2-win team. But that's if Kyler Murray's healthy, I would feel confident in the Cardinals to be a 7+ win team next year.
Dude, that team's even with Kyler's great.
You just said they're the worst team in the league.
But you look at Lou Anarumo and what he's done schematically, he's going to make any offense he goes up against work, and it's going to be a manageable game for the offense.
Yeah, but
That's
they have no offensive line and they have no receivers.
Kyler Murray's had no offensive line since he's been a rookie. He's been fine.
But he's coming off an injury, bro. It's different. He's coming off an injury. It's not the same.
Year.
Yeah, but still, even with the bad offensive line, when Kyler Murray's had at least some time, the offense can move.
Pre-injury, though. This is a post-injury Kyler Murray.
So you're saying the ACL is just going to ruin his entire ability?
It's just going to take him a year to get back into the swing of things.
Why would it take him a year to get back into the swing of things?
Historically, it usually takes.
That's how most players are.
Historically, Joe Burrow didn't happen with him.
Joe Burrow is not.
He made the Super Bowl a year removed from an ACL.
I understand.
I understand Burrow's an outlier.
Burrow also had Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and people. He actually had people to throw the ball to.
Are you discounting Joe Burrow now? Stop discounting Joe Burrow.
No, you're trying to compare Joe Burrow to Kyler Murray.
Are you discounting? No, I know Joe Burrow's way, but I'm just
saying. I agree with you. The talent gap is different.
I just don't agree with the fact that just because Kyler Murray's coming off an injury, he's going to be garbage.
No, he's going to take some time. You're talking about Arizona Cardinals.
He'll be good. He'll be good still. He'll be a good quarterback still.
They wouldn't win 7 games, bro. You know how many games is 7 games?
They can beat the Rams twice. Why can't they?
Where there's another 5 wins coming from, though, Joel?
They can. Okay, let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the schedule real quick. They can definitely beat the Rams twice. The Rams suck.
They can also lose to the Rams
twice.
They can literally lose to
the Rams. If they had Lou, I'm talking about if they had Lou Anarumo.
Yes, I agree. They can lose to the Rams. That's a division game.
Back and he's healthy. They're not beating them twice.